most I've ever heard of an attorney physically billing in a single year is 3,200 hours. And if you have no idea what that means and no context for that number and what that looks like on a daily basis, don't worry, keep watching and you're about to find out. One of the biggest questions and misconceptions people have about lawyers is how much do lawyers actually work? Because you hear about billable hours all the time. The hours and minutes that an attorney is working and actually billing to a client to be paid, but you hear far less about how many hours in the office that really translates into. So how many hours an attorney has to be working in order to hit those billable hours. Because as anyone who's ever had an office job knows, you're not actually working every minute of that work day. So let's look at billable hour requirements first. Now, the general rule of thumb when you're an associate in a mid to large size law firm is that if you're in a more regional market, you'll be billing around 2,000 hours per year. So those are markets like Dallas, Miami, or Atlanta. And if you're in a larger market, you're going to be billing about 2,200 hours per year. So that's New York, San Francisco, Chicago type markets. Now, it's definitely true that these are not the billing hour requirements across the board. If you're in a smaller sized firm, if you're in a smaller market, your billable hour requirements could be far fewer. And if you're not at a law firm at all, if you're working in-house at a corporation, or if you're working for a government agency or a nonprofit, you're not even going to have billable hour requirements because you're not billing hours out to a client. Now, if you could bill for every single minute and hour you are at the office, it would be really easy to figure out how long you would need to be in the office to hit those billable hours, right? Because you could just take 2,200 hours, let's say, divided by 50 weeks, so assuming 2 weeks of vacation and sick days and holidays, and then divide that by 5 days per week, and you would get 8.8. So 8.8 hours in the office every day. But the reason that you can't just do that is because there are so many things going on at the office every single day that don't count as billable hours. And those can be things anywhere from personal appointments, phone calls, doctor visits, to things going on in the office like celebrating coworkers' birthdays or taking lunches, to working on legal work that's not billable. So maybe writing a law review article, going to a CLE or bar event, or working on a pro bono case. And so because all of those things are happening during the day, during the work day, it's going to prevent you from actually billing 100% of the time that you're at the office. Okay, so talking about actual numbers, how many hours do you have to be in the office in order to bill, for example, 2,200 hours per year? And Yale Law actually made a chart of this to show you both 1,800 billable hours a year and 2,200 billable hours a year, what that would look like in terms of office time. And what they came up with was for 2,200 billable hours a year, an associate would have to be in the office working 12 hours per day and 3 Saturdays per month, and that would get you to your 2,200 hours. Now, one of the issues I have with the chart is that it assumes a lot of constants, and workflow at a law firm is anything but constant. You're gonna have busy periods, you're gonna have slow periods, you're not gonna be able to walk into the office and bill 8.5 hours consistently every day throughout the entire year. You're also not going to be taking a 1 hour lunch break and a 1 hour dinner break every single day either. The other thing I don't love about the chart is that it nickels and dimes associates for non-billable time throughout the day. So it assumes a 1 hour break for lunch, a 1 hour break for dinner, 4 15-minute bathroom and coffee breaks throughout the day. And I feel very, very strongly that associates should not be pressing stop on billable timers when you take what I call these short brain breaks. And I actually talk a lot about this and how to bill your time as a law firm associate, which I will link up here in the cards. And how many hours per day you have to be in the office in order to hit those billable hours is going to depend on several different factors. And those can include things like, as a litigator, you're generally going to have a more consistent workflow than you would as a corporate attorney, for example, because litigators have scheduling orders that are issued at the beginning of cases. So when you walk into the office on any given day, you generally have an idea of what you're going to be working on, whereas corporate attorneys still have to be at the office, but might be sitting around for a few hours waiting on client comments before they can really start getting going on their billable work for that day. Another factor is going to be the practice group that you're in at your firm, because practice groups tend to be cyclical. So some firms have stronger practice groups than others, weaker practice groups than others, and just nationwide practice groups can be either hot or slow. And so what practice group you're in, sort of the timing of that and the strength of the practice group at your firm is going to determine how much billable work your practice group has, and therefore how much billable work is going to be delegated to you. Another important factor is going to be you. If you have built up a strong reputation for yourself as a capable attorney, as a hard worker, it's going to be so much easier to get partners to accept you onto their cases and to ask you back onto future cases. If you don't, if you're known as a slacker or a difficult person to work with, of course it's going to be harder to convince partners to get you onto their cases, and it's going to be harder for you to find billable work. So what I would say in terms of meeting a 2,200 billable hour requirement per year, which by the way is on the higher end of law firms, is going to look something more like working 11 hours per day in the office, 5 days a week, plus 1 Saturday per month, and working 50 weeks per year. And just to give you guys an idea of how much I billed per year, I worked at a mid-sized litigation firm that focused on IP litigation in New York and in Dallas, and the billable goals for associates was 2,400 hours per year. And IP litigation at the time was very hot. There were a ton of cases, there were a ton of parties involved, and I consistently billed between 2,300 and 2,550, I think, hours per year. When I told my friends how much I was billing, they thought I was crazy. They were billing closer to 2,000, 2,200 hours per year, and that was high. That was considered very high as well. But the truth of the matter is that because we had so many cases and we had so many projects going on, when I walked into the office, I knew what I was working on all day. I knew I could bill upwards to 90–95% of my day if I wanted to work through lunch. And so even though I was billing more hours, it was a less stressful work environment because I wasn't sitting around waiting for projects. I didn't have to go searching for cases. Every moment I was at the office was a potential billable moment. So it really does matter the practice group you're in, the firm where you work, and if you can capitalize on the time that you're in the office, or if a lot of that time winds up being dead time waiting for projects or waiting for client comments, makes all the difference in the world. That's it for this video. I hope that gave you guys a better understanding of how billable hours translate into actual hours worked at the office. Of course, if you have any other questions about billable hours, about working as an attorney, leave them in the comment section below, and I'd be more than happy to share with you everything I know. If you enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up, share it with someone you think would benefit from it, and of course, hit subscribe to see new videos every single Tuesday. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.